In this video, we will discuss how to assess the suitability of your forest and how to prepare it for hosting an educational activity. First thing you'd look at is the fact that you're going to have a bus coming off the side of a road into a woodland. So you have to look, is the exit safe? Is it safe for cars coming and passing? So you then look at your forest road. You say, can a bus drive down there? Can he park? Also, is it safe for the bus to park? And is there access for emergency vehicles should the unfortunate thing happen? Now, we hope it won't. If as a forest owner, you're going to encourage educational facilities to use your forest, you would need a degree of what I would say preparation on a forest road. You really don't want debris lying around, you don't want bark lying around. Not a huge job, but a little bit of thought goes in at the start, and plus the image you want to portray is that you're running a professional operation here. So if you have debris lying around, old signs, bits of plastic, first of all, it's not safe, and second of all, it doesn't look good. And ideally, what you'd have is a combination of softwood, hardwoods, and different age profiles of timber. So in an ideal situation, you'd have young, medium, and old crops, and you'd also have hardwoods of various species and softwood of various species. Now, how often is that going to happen? We don't know. We work with what we have, but ideally you have to have at least 3 to 4 different species to show people. Actually, preparing these paths was a sort of a semi-education for me, because we were looking at the paths in an eye of somebody that has never been down there before. Now, that's a completely different from somebody who hasn't, because not only are you looking up at the trees, you're also looking down at the seedlings. And that's the bit that most of us as forest owners don't do. We look obviously where we're going, but we don't look up. We look up, but we don't look down. And when we were looking down, we could see small little regeneration, little small trees, various species. We could see species that the seeds fell from the trees. We could also see species that the birds had brought in. We also could see species that the wind had brought in. So like you had 3 different species in an oak forest growing underneath it. Now that's the bit that's exciting, that I as a forest owner would like. We try to design that path in a circular route, so they're not backtracking on where they were before. Now, sometimes that meant, as we had today, we crossed a big deep drain. So that wasn't safe. So we obviously, within the project, we got a design for a bridge that we can use, that any forest owner can build on site with very simple tools. So that meant that we were able to cross a bridge into another plantation and bring the students round. The other thing we found was, by maybe not making the path directly straight, that by bringing them round, it adds more interest because it slows them down and they see the tree in front of them. So what's in my forest won't be in somebody else's forest. Some of it will, but there'll be other little things, and they can focus on them. They can focus on a little, maybe different biodiversity, maybe different plants, maybe different birds. The wildlife in the forest is amazing. That's something now that, and for me as a non-wildlife person, I had to go through a sort of a semi-educational for myself to know what birds were there, what animals were there, what paths animals were using. And in a way that educated me to educate other people. Actually, we were going through some of the fields today, or some of the paths today, and I was saying to some of the students, I remember when I chased sheep around this field. I remember when I cut hay around this field. So I actually can remember one of the fields we camped in as kids. A gang of us camped in that field, and here we have a forest. Never would anyone in our generation have thought that we'd convert agricultural land back into forestry, and it's been one of the great stories of Irish agriculture, so it has. Obviously, you're going to have a group of students, and if you just have a path, you're only going to deal with the person each side of you. So what we decided was we'd open up a nice interesting area within the forest. So obviously you have to pick it. You pick where there's reasonably level ground. You also pick it that the 3 species around you are there, that you can talk about them, be it their size, be it their species, be it the ground, or be it the regeneration. Now we spent a bit of time It's not the easiest thing to do, but when you do find a nice place and you stand there with a group and they can see. The other thing is you use what you have there. So if there's a tree falling over, well, I look at that and say, well, that's an opportunity to have a tree that we can measure because it's lying on the ground. Do you know, if there's an area where there's brambles growing, well, let's look at what them brambles have. It's not a sanitized area. This is a working forest. You notice we had little small drains. So what we did with the drains was we cleared down into them that people could see them. We just cut the weeds back. So we didn't try and fill them in. We didn't try and spend money piping them. We said, there's the drains. So you can see them. Don't step into them. You have to realize that you are now the custodian of their safety within your forest. So you have to do a couple of things. They're quite simple. You do a method statement and you do a risk assessment. In our new program, we'll have them on QR codes so people can look at them and they probably can adapt them a little bit. First aid, it would be ideal for somebody to have first aid. You also want to think when you're parking vehicles that an emergency vehicle can get in and out. You also want to make sure that the bus is there. So if somebody feels tired, feels cold, that they can go back out, as we saw today, that somebody went back out and sat down in the bus and they came back and joined us later. So what our forester did, which I thought was very nice, he dropped any of the brambles or that he was clearing. He dropped them to sort of focus people in that they wouldn't wander off the path. And we made little timber signs and we just put them on posts. The other thing too is you don't nail a sign to a tree. If you want to put it around a tree, hang it around the tree with a bit of twine. Do you know what I mean? All this sort of stuff. It might sound stupid, but this is all the stuff you want to be aware of. You don't want brambles coming out that'll poke somebody in the eye. You know, all this has to be explained to people. Do you know what I mean? We obviously, when they get off the bus, we welcome them. We also prepare them. We say about health and safety. But we also then would have a map. As you see, if you went to a Quilcha walk or any walk, there's a map, I'd call it maybe perhaps a legend. And with that, you have the route and you have the stops marked out. So then they're prepared for what they're going into, if you know what I mean. So they look and say, oh, well, here's the oak now, and here's the sitka, and oh, we're going to talk about the cherry, or we're going to do a bit of tree measurement, or perhaps we're going to plant a few trees. So they have an idea of what's going on, and a visualization in their head, the route. You know, once they have a picture, then they can work with it. Thank you for watching, and for further information on this exciting project, please contact the Northeast Forestry Group.